Thank you so much for being here again today. Firstly, I'd like to talk to you about meditation. Can you talk to us about the purpose of meditation and give us any guidance around the subject?
The difficulty of meditation is that as soon as you begin to still the mind, one puts in, shall we say, the directive, mind be still. And the mind processes this in over and over and over. What is stillness? And so on, it goes on and on. So the very activity is far more than if one were to be. If one is to be, first of all, you put your attention on yourself. And you take notice of being yourself. That is, one is in the body. The body extends. One feels, shall we say, the vibratory energy of the body. One feels oneself in the space one is occupying. One realizes then that you are in the place of maximum abilities. One is at the point of influence. Do you understand what I mean? So from the point of influence, one can feel into the world. One feels into that field of influence until one meets the boundaries of its exact influence. Then you begin to feel that there is a wider influence. One is not only determining one's own reality, but one is influencing the realities of those that surround one. You understand, there is the beginnings of a co-creation that is with the family. That is those that you share the house and environment with. And then you feel beyond that and you begin to feel, shall we say, the field of influence that is one's acquaintances and friends. You feel that whatever you are creating in your own person field of influence is affecting the wider fields. You understand what I am talking about? One is then experiencing fields within fields within fields, the nested fields of influence that we have been discussing. Do you understand that when one is meditating in this way, the mind is not interested? Do you follow? It is got nothing to make a mountain with. So it simply is willing to experience. And in that experience, stillness begins to arise.
So you're telling us just to be in the body, feel the body.
Of course, to be in the center of one's beginnings. You understand it there in the very core, one created space. First of all, create time and space, then create a physical environment, and then create a body in which to move in the physical environment. That is your center. That is where you are interacting with the first levels of creativity. One could spend an entire lifetime, shall we say, improving the physical body, making it more flexible, more beautiful, all of those things within the characteristics of the fields of influence. If you want to try to look like a teenager when you are in your 80s and 90s, you will be in conflict with the remaining fields of influence. And in doing so, one will find that the conflict is worse than simply melding in with it. Creating what is acceptable. You understand what I mean? So one begins to look as if one is in one's 80s or 90s, but everybody realizes there is a flexibility that is not available to everyone. There is a youthfulness in the way of being that is not available to everyone, but you still look and appear within the context that is acceptable in that field of influence.
So with meditation, if we are just sitting there and being and getting in touch with our physical body, if we feel some sort of negative emotion, whether it's anxiety or anger or frustration or anything, do we just push that aside and continue with our meditation, or should we be really like tackling those negative emotions as they come up?
Of course, because they did not appear from nowhere. One is creating negative emotions. Then, unless one is asking the question of self, what is this teaching me about myself? A negative emotion is a teacher. It is not even negative at all. It is positive. It is, you understand, if the teacher is in front of the classroom and you cannot understand what is being taught, do you want the teacher not to come over and explain it? And if you were to want to do this, you would have to put up your hand and acknowledge that you are not getting the lesson, that you feel as if you are stupid. Do you follow? Many people, many of the children just sit there not wanting to acknowledge that they are stupid. Do you follow what I mean?
So you're saying to ask the negative emotion, or sorry, not negative emotion, ask the feeling what it's there for.
Of course. What is else the point? So the frustration comes up. Shall we take this as an example? And you are realizing it is telling you that you are trying to do something that is not necessarily working. It is not the right thing. And if you drop the frustration, shall we say, you begin to sit exactly where you are in the beingness, suddenly there is nothing to achieve. You are not achieving. There is no success and failure. And where can the frustration be? Do you understand what I mean? It simply has dissolved because you are not making it happen. Do you understand? Frustration is not being able to achieve something you have set. But if you stop setting, there is nothing to achieve. And then there cannot be any feelings at all. One is being exactly where one is.
Yeah.
And honoring exactly where one is. And if you take, for example, one is sitting there trying to meditate because you are angry with someone, and you put your attention on being, what is this anger attempting to tell me? Then suddenly you recognize, I am hurt. That is all. I am hurt, and I am trying to put the blame for my feelings of hurt onto someone else. That is where anger arises. And one acknowledges, I am hurt. And then you have the choice. Because the heart will tell you something else, that you are expecting yourself to have certain things, and the very anger is pointing to whatever it is that you can, shall we say, tune out, hone up, and then you can sit again in the beingness. Do you understand each of these emotions? If one penetrates into them, will take you into quietness.
If we are sitting there being present in our body and things come up, the best thing to do is really just ask what the message is or the wisdom is, or why this is happening. Of course,
what is the lesson? Because it is a consequence. Remember, we have been saying everything comes with a consequence. And every consequence has a source. The place from which you personally, in your field of influence, created. Nobody else created it for you, unless, of course, you have no power. Unless, of course, you are creating, first of all, the notion of being a victim. As soon as you are not a victim, then you are already the manufacturer, the manifestor, the creator of one's experience.
So what's your guidance when it comes to having a daily routine based around meditation? I know a lot of spiritual teachers advise to meditate every day for 15 or 20 minutes. What is your...
I want to say this. Once one has learned to be all the time. You understand? When the mind is busy, simply stop. My solution is, when the mind is busy, sit and be until it is still again, until the guidance of what is important. Then you can begin your daily activities. Remembering always, if one is in the state of being, guidance is constant. The mind is not generating all of the other materials, not disturbing. Do you understand? When it disturbs, it puts in a thought, and then the emotional body comes to support it. It is pointing out, as a consequence, that one first of all creates reality by the thoughts, and in most cases by the word. And it begins to stimulate the emotional body, if it is something that is uplifting, you begin to feel excited. Your interest is so high that you can see it in front of you as you can touch it, and all of that, the very things that you are told necessary to attract it to your experience. You understand? Then you are certainly creating your experience, your reality, inside your field of influence. Nobody can create inside your field of influence unless you create a space for them.